There you go. All right. Hey, everybody. Telling you, throw the word special event in front of something and people show up. It's all a joke. It's all smoke and mirrors. Don't you guys realize that? It's just,
Don't
you keep
say
falling for it.
that. This
It
one's
just-
not.
No, this one's not. This one's the best. This is great. Who started this?
The
Who's the
book.
person who said they were reading it and we said we
have
should
this
have a
book.
town hall? And are they here? Lori, was you?
Oh, it's on my iPad.
Who are you pointing to, Rebecca?
I'm pretty sure I'm the
No,
culprit.
it
on
was
that one.
you.
See, you were the
Oh.
culprit. That's right, Cassie. You were the culprit.
I'm pretty sure I was the culprit.
Congratulations.
All right.
We're happy.
Okay. Cassie, we'll
I'll
put-
take ownership of that one. That's an
Okay,
easy.
that's right. I knew it was something like, who the heck said that? Well, Cassie, I'll say to you first. I'll put you on the spot. Biggest takeaway from the book.
I don't know if I have just one. A lot of it was really validating things that I've talked with people about, and it just gave a different perspective. So I guess the takeaway is just kind of those fine tuning of things and kind of reframing things that I already do in just a way that works just a little bit better.
Okay.
Does that make sense? There wasn't
Take
like this,
that.
there wasn't a lot of things that were like, wow, this is completely new, but it took things and explained them just a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And gave me
I
some
think-
different language to use with people too, which I thought was great. The one I was thinking of right before we started was even that idea of like what he calls reverberation, like not just the feedback loop, not just I tell you, you tell me, but really continuing to use that and reflect back and forth on it. And I like that because otherwise I feel like a lot of the people that I've worked with really take feedback as, yep, I've got my feedback, now I'm done.
Right. As one moment in time and it's over.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to back up a little bit, if you haven't read the book, essentially what they
efficient.
present is 7 different, I'm going to call them areas, they call them drivers, about how we can shift or frame the work that we do as coaches. So reverberation is one of them, but it's further down the line.
Number 5.
Yeah, collaboration is number 1, transparency, inquiry, discourse, reverberation, sincerity, and influence.
Okay,
So
you
it's-
had those written somewhere, right? You did.
I totally did. I totally
Okay,
did.
I was gonna
Although
say,
I could
wow, I'm
probably
really
give you-
impressed.
Yeah.
I could probably give you 4 off the top of my head because I have done a lot of work with this book.
I could do them, but I couldn't do them in order. Like,
Yeah, I don't.
so,
I
mean,
couldn't
was
do it. I
super
couldn't tell you
impressed
number
there.
5
I was
was
just
that one
feeling it.
either, unless I was looking at the list and I counted real fast. So
Yeah,
I
so
was just really feeling that. So
the first couple I could probably do, but then I would get them out. They just wouldn't be in the right order. Not that there is a right or wrong, really. But I think, go ahead.
Did anyone look at the Wii video templates?
the Wii video.
That while I listened to his discussion on his website.
Oh, I didn't look at his website.
Yeah, and he has this company called Wii Video, and there's all kinds of templates on it of to start kind of things, activities to start.
Is this the author of the book, Mary? That
Yes.
has the website. Oh, okay. Do you have a?
I'm trying to
Hold
find
on.
it, Mary, as
Yeah.
you're talking.
I'm getting it there. Just my fingers weren't moving fast enough.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Books.
So yeah, he was one of the co-founders of WeVideo, which WeVideo is similar to Screencastify, similar to Loom. It's in that same family of things.
a little heavier on editing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but there are templates there that I don't know if Screencastify is. You're making your own video there on Screencastify, right?
When I typed in WeVideo, I typed in WeVideo templates and I got a whole website right on WeVideo that has templates listed.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
Oh, I gotta
It's in
find it
there
again
now.
now.
Are those his videos or are those just we video templates?
Yeah, I wonder
in
if
general?
they're,
That's
'cause I was-
they're his templates, I believe. I believe
Okay, 'cause
I could
know
be
when
wrong.
we
I could
we
be
used
wrong.
we video at the school I was at, and they had tons of templates, but I never saw any that were like his specifically. That's what I'm curious about.
Oh, okay.
These ones here look like they're just we videos templates.
okay.
I see.
There
Okay.
are like reproducibles around the book
And
that,
I have them in a
Yeah.
yeah, I have them in a shared Google Drive folder from when we did the AT chat that I can
Yep.
share.
yeah, I just put the link to it also.
Yeah, and solution tree, right?
Awesome.
Mhm.
Yep.
One of
Yes.
those books that I actually started, as I pulled it up on my Kindle, I'd gotten to the first chapter, but hadn't gotten, had put down and forgot about. So I'm
So
glad,
what do you remember from the first chapter?
not much, because I think I read it like a year ago. I bought it about a year ago. So now it's interesting how like when you need something. So I've been actually struggling with a district that has hired me to do some coaching with just
Ah,
like some virtual coaching, and just like feeling like I'm getting crickets in terms of
Mhm.
when I'm asking my typical coaching questions. And it's like pulling teeth to get responses. So I was like, I saw the post about this today, and I was like, I got to get on this because I am definitely struggling and not feeling like I feel like I'm going into like they're asking for teach me how to do this instead of let's explore what you're doing. And I want to find a balance between giving them what they want. Like, okay, they specifically said,
We want
please give us
training in
support on Spanish language resources for AAC users because it's a district with a high multilingual population, Spanish speaking multilingual population, and getting them to reflect on what they are doing right now already, like, and exploring their success or lack of success.
So I would highly recommend, Beth. This is one of those things. It may not be the link that you shared, but it's one of the things that's in the shared folder.
I got it right in front.
So when we did AT chat, I did a like sample version, like how could I have, and to me, maybe it's my coaching or my training,
Mhm.
but I think going through and thinking through like, okay, based on what happened, this is about like our behavior as a coach, less about their response to our behavior, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
You know, and how did those people that I'm working with kind of push my thinking? What was something risky that I tried that worked? Did I try something risky? And you know, what long-term haven't I made progress, and what will I do about it? So I think that coach reflection piece might be really helpful walking into the next time that you see them, to see like, and again, maybe it's a piece of it. There is a teacher reflection tool too. But I don't know if the staff that you're working for are ready for that. Like,
Right.
I don't know if they're in a space where they're open and ready for that. To me, maybe it goes back to those beginning questions. Let me pull up my other document real quick. Around kind of their, like, how they're processing what's happening in their district.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it might be that they were just told, like, this person's coming in and she's going to fix all your problems. And in which case they may like, okay, this girl's going to come in and fix all my problems. That's awesome. But if the stage was set for there to be collaboration and for you to be transparent straight up and be like, hey, you know, this is really what I want to work with you guys on. This is, you know, if that's not what you guys feel like you need, like, we need to have that inquiry conversation to kind of draw through, like, and knowing that we don't have all the answers as the coach, having that really kind of, I don't know, I think it's healthy conversation that allows them the space to feel like they can speak about what's happening or what might not be working. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's section 2 in that transparency section, which is so important. And you're right there. It might be closer to where Beth's group
I think
is,
it
where
might
they're
be-
living.
I think it might be part of what, like, I think there was very little expectation set. It was like, oh, Beth will be doing follow-up to her full day in-person training on a, monthly basis. It's not mandatory because obviously, like, I'm sure that was, like conveyed, because I don't get a full group ever coming, but it's also like, when you're like, like the tricks, like, the way to ask the questions, and you're still like, it's like, I'm like, okay. And I've gotten a little, but it's like, oh, this is like so painful for them to like interact. I actually feel like I'm talking to principals. If you've ever coached principals, they don't ever, like, they will not respond to questions about like what's working, what's not. They never want to put themselves on the line with their colleagues,
Right.
to show that they might be like not perfect.
Well,
right?
Beth, that's so funny. It's so funny you said that, because in the book, when they talk about the start of this chapter, that transparency chapter, the things that cause people to be resistant to this is fear of losing business, fear of being embarrassed, fear of feeling inferior. And when you just described that, that's that group.
Yeah. Yeah. And these, I haven't had the same experience usually with the educators. Usually like actually like classroom-based folks tend to be much more, I think, responsive.
Mhm.
But when I've coached administrators, they're like, I'm not going to say anything. That would make me look incompetent. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. But these are good. This is like motivating me to get in there and do some reading.
Mike, didn't you do a podcast on part of this book? Because I think that's when I started reading the book, because you were doing a podcast and I was trying to read the chapters along with the podcast pieces.
Yeah. So I did one. Yeah, Rebecca, I did
Okay.
one for every chapter as I went
Yep.
through. Yeah. And
Yep.
had basically this same conversation, except with myself. So this is much nicer.
So happy to oblige.
I talk to myself all day and it's not fun. I don't find any joy in it. I need to talk to other people.
See,
Yeah.
I have a little thing that takes care of that. Oh, hold on. I got to get my video out of there. Get rid of that.
There you go. If you bring it back.
There
you
it
go.
is. I live in my own little
Mhm.
world. It's okay. They know me here. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I like that.
Yeah.
So
And-
I have a question kind of following up to what we were just talking about. In that inquiry section, I'm just curious, how many of you have done anything specific with the question formulation technique that he talks about? I really thought that was fascinating. And I can think of a few places that I'm interested in using that, but I'm curious how other people have used it. So for people that haven't read the book, he's basically talking about this technique of asking the people you're working with to come up with as many questions as possible, right? Just like without judgment, just questions about, obviously you pick a topic first. So it's not just like, what's the current price of, waffles? I don't know. But coming up with as many as possible without judgment. And then from there, kind of making them better questions, kind of trying to get away from yes, no, solid things, and then start discussions from there. And he goes into a lot more. But I mean, I was kind of thinking of that even with some of those resistant groups like Beth's talking about, if you pick a topic and people are asking questions, they're not necessarily as vulnerable in that situation.
Right.
So I'm curious if anybody's used it in that way, or if there's other ways people have used that technique.
So the coach is asking the question, or the teachers are asking the question?
So the teachers are.
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to say yes, Mary. It's
Yeah.
a little of everything, right? It's the group. It's the group coming together to figure out what are the questions. And Cassie, I've never used it specifically as it's in the book, but I feel as I go through it, I'm using parts of that as I'm talking to teams and to educators, but maybe not in this kind of A, B, C, D approach to things, like write down the list. I do like this idea though, because if you're bringing them into the question development process, you're getting a window into where they're at in this process at the same time. So while they're doing this part, they're also giving you information about themselves and where they feel they are, without having to feel vulnerable, because they're kind of talking about something else. And I like that.
And I had used it when we were brainstorming regarding a student the other day, because people have been really hesitant to kind of give an opinion, or, you know, that they were going to be wrong. And so we had kind of picked, you know, kind of student experience based, and then just kind of questions, and just threw out everything. And we got some really good questions. And like you said, it really showed kind of where each person's concern was, right? Because certain people were asking questions about communication more, and certain people were asking questions about, you know, the students' emotional welfare, and certain people were asking a lot of questions about academics. And it was really interesting to see where each person's priority was and where their focus was. And it actually triggered a really great conversation around some of the miscommunications that have been happening within the group, because they realized that they were all had very different priorities when they were looking at the student experience. And so we didn't necessarily go through all the steps of this, but it was really interesting just to have that idea of starting the conversation with asking questions instead of sharing thoughts or opinions or concerns. You know, I mean, you sit down with a group, oh, what's your concerns? Well, it kind of could be questions, but it usually ends up with some people feeling very attacked.
Yeah.
But questions are safer. And so, yeah, I love what you said there. And I haven't used it step by step.
Yeah.
But I'm just, I love examples of that.
Yeah, I love the idea of it though, like to kind of put a framework on what we may be doing at different parts throughout our coaching with teams, and start thinking about this, especially this questioning thing. I told you a few weeks back, I'm on a question kick, like a questioning kick. And so every book I have is about questions and asking questions and coming up with questions, and they're everywhere. They're sitting on my desk. I'm overrun with these question books. So I think it's really exactly that, Cassie. It's that idea of, well, maybe I'll get to you this way. If you're not going to be comfortable bringing these things up, and we're not going to feel like we're getting anywhere, maybe I'll work around that barrier that you might have thrown up.
Well, and what's interesting is I remember years ago, there was a really big push about, you know, brainstorming, and, you know, everybody sits down and throws out their ideas with no judgment, right? There's no wrong idea. And, you know, people really pushed that, and it seemed like it was a really big thing that was happening, you know, these group brainstorms where no ideas are bad and we throw them all out. But I feel like people always kind of knew their ideas were, unless they were in a very safe group, they knew their ideas were being judged anyway.
Right.
And I like the question thing. It gets at a lot of those same things, but without, you know, it being
less opportunity for judgment, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it brings, and it takes it further directions. You know what I mean? Whereas let's everybody throw out their ideas about this. If you don't always have a lot of outside of the box thinkers, you're still not getting a very wide range.
Yeah.
Whereas questions, like, I mean, look at your pile of books, Mike. They can go so many directions.
Right. Right. And it's interesting because, you know, you go back to that same thought as we start to bring up these questions in this generating phase. I wanted to call it the question brainstorming phase, but I didn't want to mash our ideas together here. But this idea of the generation of questions, as you start to put them together and kind of put them in buckets, you're right. It brings us to conversation points like, isn't that interesting that we have 50 questions about communication? And so maybe that's an area we should focus on. It gives us a path without us saying, oh, our communication is horrible.
Right.
And it allows that to come up kind of naturally, organically almost.
Right. And I see also Tammy, I agree. She uses Jamboard,
Mhm.
you know, some of those other interactive tools, depending on the setting that you're in. If I'm in a setting where they have access to devices and can do that, it is that way that Or an open collaborative doc where it's, the anonymous walrus that's doing something and not, your coworker that you may have that opportunity to go, I don't know, that idea is crazy. But I think being able to gather information, and sometimes I will do that asynchronously before I walk into a conversation.
Right.
So if I from everybody go, okay, what's really going on here? Give me, your feedback. And maybe it's, in a Google Doc or on a Jamboard, just drop it there. And then when we're face to face, we can have conversations, but it's not like, oh, Johnny's question was this and Miss So-and-so's question was this. It's like, oh, I see we have a question about this and this and this, and they all are kind of talking about the same thing. So let's address that.
Right.
So I think finding some ways to do that. And again, I feel like I get better participation if it's something I send out ahead of time.
Yeah.
That they have a moment to think. Does it mean some people just ignore the email? Absolutely. But I think I give them a second opportunity, like it's linked on the second slide I'm doing it, or it's linked on the slide that's up as people are coming in. And it's, who are you? And, go click on this link and don't, if you haven't already had a chance to, go fill out that. So I think being able to gather it asynchronously, again, in that safety mechanism, kind of gives them space to say something that maybe they would say to you one-on-one, but they would definitely not say in a large group. And a lot of times if I have somebody say something to me one-on-one, because they do trust that I'm not going to go, oh, Miss So-and-so just said this and whew, but I can rephrase that in a way as we're bringing it to a discussion that question gets answered without it being Miss So-and-so raised this question, but we get the answer out there. We have the discussion we need to have, but it's not like this person. And often I find it sometimes is the paraprofessional in the situation is having a struggle with a teacher, a parent, a whoever, and is not going to voice that directly to the person. But as we're in a team kind of discussion about how we're doing something, and sometimes it's about how are we implementing a device, right? Or another AT tool, we can also have that problem solving discussion of, okay, well, as we're talking about who's going to help with this, like, let's naturally break that problem down that I happen to know because she shared with me one-on-one.
Right. Yeah, we're getting good stuff in the chat. Sarah, I don't know if you don't want me to read it or you want to reiterate. I'll read it. I'm looking for your microphone. I'm waiting to see your mic kick on. And if it kicks on, I stop talking.
No, it kicked on, so I can start talking.
Fantastic.
We've had a really great opportunity to work with Jim Knight's instructional coaching group and Sharon Thomas. And part of what we talk a lot about is it's so different to coach one person, so that individual coaching versus coaching a team, because you have so many of the dynamics you guys have all been talking about. And so one of the things Sharon had encouraged us, because I very rarely get to coach somebody individually, it's most often larger teams, is to go around and do like a little bit of like a 5-minute interview with the people that sit on this team about, how do they prefer to communicate? Are there any things that they struggle with in a meeting, that if somebody swore that they would shut down, and how that might feel to them? We talk about like, what is their goal or their vision for this work that they're there? Why are they there? Anyone that knows me, it's my favorite thing to talk about is why. Like, why are you doing this work? Why are you involved? And then bringing that to the group anonymously so that they can kind of see, here are our group norms. This is how we're going to function as a team. And we had a site that did this, and I will say watching how the team interacted was so cool, because they had this sense of respect and they all were bought in and they felt like their voices were valued. So even though it slows it down in the beginning, I think having those conversations, and then it also helps us misinterpret things that I think sometimes we tell our own stories. I'm reading the book Crucial Conversations, and in part of that, that idea that when you see something, you immediately tell yourself. So if you show up and no one's asking questions, you're automatically starting with that, okay, well, what's going on? And you start telling that story. So it just helps kind of understand their perspective too.
Love it. Awesome. You said that 9,000 times better than I would have if you didn't turn your mic on. So thank you. That was awesome. So good. What else we got in the chat? No. Let me see.
I really think it's interesting, Beth, that you said in the chat that you enjoy being coached, that you forget it's uncomfortable for others. I think it's really easy for those of us who spend a lot of time working with groups and talking with groups and asking the questions and stuff, that it becomes second nature-ish.
Mhm.
Can't say second nature, but second nature-ish. And even though I don't love groups, I've gotten comfortable with it, right? So sometimes it's easy to forget or not really put yourself in that headspace of how uncomfortable it can be for some people. I mean, I've got a couple of colleagues who will message me right before a training, and they'll outright say that if there is a get to know you activity or they have to talk to someone, they're going to the bathroom. Like, that's how they're going into the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was a really great point.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. I don't know how many times people say that, stay away from icebreakers, hashtag no icebreakers and stuff like that. But those things have value.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's trying to dig underneath it and say, what is the value I'm getting from that? And is there a different way to do that?
I agree, like, about the icebreakers piece. I totally get it when people are like, they don't like cheesy icebreakers where they've got to reveal personal information. When I do icebreakers, I always try to make them really relevant to the training, and I usually get good participation from that. Like, it relates to what we're doing, but yeah, with what Cassie was saying about, because I've been like, even in recent years, like, I've been the coachee, right? Like, when I was an assistant principal, being coached was a huge part of our program as an assistant. If you start as an assistant principal, you get 2 years of coaching, whether you want it or not. And I always enjoyed it, but not everybody does, right? And it wasn't a choice. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I volunteered to be coached. I was told I had to be coached. It didn't matter. But
Nathan was an assistant principal too. And I just wondered, because he says coaching is, ubiquitous among the schools. And I just wondered how it is ubiquitous. Is it through the assistant principal, or is it through some other means?
I think it's a great question. I think it could be anywhere. I think it could be anywhere and anyone in different situations. I mean, look around our group today. Is anyone here? Well, Beth, you can even raise your hand. Is anyone here an assistant principal?
I was.
There you go. I wanted someone to raise their hand. I think it's the idea of what different professionals bring to this conversation, and we can all be coaches. We can all be that person that facilitates this kind of change. And thinking about how we do that. Beth, you made me think of that section 6 of the book, talking about sincerity. The coach self-monitoring their interactions to encourage others to bring them into the conversation. How do we amplify others' voices? How do we do that as we move through these situations and have people feel comfortable? And so those things do have weight. They do matter. We're doing things that are purposeful. We're not doing them just because. And I think Leslie said that in the chat somewhere. People don't feel it's worth it to share because their input doesn't go anywhere after it is shared. And so if that's the feeling you're bringing into this, why would you participate? Or why wouldn't you feel like, another icebreaker that I'll sit here for one class period or one staff meeting, and then we'll never talk about this again. So I just got to ride it out.
Icebreakers are hard too, like, especially when they're not relevant, because the person you're sitting, unless if you're doing coaching in a team, they probably already know each other anyways and know each other's. I don't want to get up and go walk halfway across the room to go talk to somebody, to turn around and go sit back down in my seat. But if I can talk to them about something that's relevant, it's way better.
Yeah, I agree. Rebecca, I agree, because I think when I think about coaching, a lot of the times I'll come in a group and I'll laugh and say, I'm the only one here who doesn't know anyone. You all work with each other. So really it's about me at this point. I need to find ways to dig in and get a little understanding of you as the professional, each of you. And maybe an icebreaker is not the best way to do that, but maybe some probing questions. Let me cycle it back to my stack of books on questions. Maybe some probing questions about what they feel or what their experiences are in relation to what we are talking about. And I think you're right. I think that's a good way to do that.
I think transparency is a good one as well, because if you're not transparent about why you're there to coach and what you're doing, and they're not transparent about why they're there. I mean, if you're being forced to go to the coaching session, you may not be willing to participate as well as if it's something that you really wanted to do. So the transparency of, this is what I'm here to do. This is why I'm doing it. And you can be honest to be transparent with me, whether it's through an asynchronous, that transparency could go a lot into your questioning.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's really a great point. And it was exactly kind of along with what I was just thinking too, is I feel like sometimes the icebreakers and the transparency piece and, people's willingness to talk, I feel like sometimes too, and I can get where I forget this a little bit, is recognizing how close is this group and how much are they going to be working together? Because sometimes I'll get pulled in to do more of a voluntary coaching thing and, it won't be the same group for more than one meeting. And so it's hard for people to take the risk to be a little more open or vulnerable or, daring in their questions when they know these same people aren't going to be there the next time, or, there's not going to be that follow through. So, I mean, sometimes, an icebreaker and trying to get people to be vulnerable and open, people don't see the value in that if it's not going to be carried through with the same group.
Yeah.
And I've had groups that the same group works together and they're committed to work together for an extended period. And then I start seeing a lot more openness. And so it makes me wonder, which techniques may work better when we know we're going in with groups that aren't going to be so solid, that are not going to be consistent, that aren't going to be working together for longer periods, versus which techniques are more valuable in groups that will be. Yeah. Because I feel like there's very, very much a different level of time that should be taken in some of that group building and those norms and all of those things, if it's a short-term group versus a group that's going to stick together longer.
Yeah, I think I think as a facilitator, Cassie, I think that becomes part of our process of gathering information on the group, the big group. I'll even say the organization who asks us to do this coaching or building, whatever it might be, and finding out in that phase, that initial collecting of information, what is the person in charge? What is their vision for what this is? And if they feel like this will be fragmented groups throughout, then it might be conversations to talk to that person about, well, what is our vision in totality? And then how can I break that down and leave each of these groups with some kind of task or some kind of next step that actually filters back into the bigger solution they are searching for? Because you're right. I think it's easy for people to say, well, you know what, I'm not going to be here next month, so why would I do that? I'm out. Again, I put my time in. And I think those are really hard moments. And I think part of that sincerity and that transparency is acknowledging that out loud to people. And say, look, we are all part of this solution, whether you're going to be here every month with us or not. We are all part of it, because ultimately you are part of the solution. So how can we all do that somehow? It's tricky. And it asks a lot in the beginning. We're kind of prepping a lot in the beginning before we start. But it also, you could see that as having some potential for making that information and that sharing feel valuable to people, even those ones that are not going to join us every time.
I like that you brought up just putting that right on the table right away.
Yeah.
Right? Because I feel like some people kind of check out because they may not be there long term. But I think having that conversation that some people won't be staying, but what you share today is still valuable and the group will still be considering it. And the dog is excited about it.
Yeah. And it's that idea then of saying to people, what are we going to create as far as a platform for sharing, so that even if you're not here for a few months, you can still be part of us as we go forward, because you are still part of us, whether you're here each time or not.
Well, yeah, and it does, I think, go back to our responsibility in the very beginning when we're having a conversation with whoever it is that is saying, come in and do this work, about what, like you said, the big picture goal is, but then how can I cohesively like weave together these seemingly disparate groups if they're different people. And it's amazing how just one person or two people not being there or being new to the group can change the dynamic completely. And then you almost feel like you're rapport building all over again with a new group, even though you may be on the 5th session of whatever this is. And I think I agree, Jennifer, the generational differences in coaching, just the difference in having a conversation with a brand new grad, or somebody who's been in the field for a while. And if they're both in the same group, that's a whole different dynamic to work through each of those bring strengths to the table, but they're very different in how they approach problem solving even.
Yeah. But again, I feel like that's something too that we might have to acknowledge right up front, is that some of those differences are perceptions and not realities. You know, I think, and I think instantly to that idea of recent grads or younger professionals are more adept at technology than older. And that cringes me, maybe because I'm old now, but that cringes me a little bit, because it's not always true. And I think that has to be, I think that's a perception people have, that we have to say right up front, well, let's get a sense of who we are and what is our capability here.
I'm going to just jump in, and I'm going to stay, keep my camera off because I've showered, but that's about it today because I'm home with 6 kids. I have found that younger generation, like those millennials and I don't know, Gen Zers, are coming in and they're more bold and they're calling some of our more experienced teachers out. It's just really interesting how to get those different, and I think some of those older generations that have more experience are very, they're kind of put off by that confrontation. They're more of that, you respect your elders, you respect, like that, those years of experience, and trying to get those two different groups of people to work together has been such a struggle. And I think even coming back to like coaching questions and how you approach it, you really have to approach it differently in a way, especially it's easier if you're working more one-on-one, but in a team, it's really interesting, the dynamics. And I think you start to see some of those people just shut down in some of those team sort of meetings because they get very frustrated. So it's been interesting. We've had that with a lot of our younger, newer staff.
And Jennifer, I think that part of that, I wonder if part of that, if I could play an armchair therapist for a second, I wonder if part of that is also that fear of not being found out as being new, and that fear of being found out that I don't know something, or whether I do or not, it's irrelevant. But are they fearing that, or are they feeling the pressure of being part of a group with others that feel like they've been there for a while? And do we just need to find a way to value their participation? Somehow.
Well, what's frustrating is I was through the Education Staff Associate class, which is required in Washington schools. And, they're using Jamboard and they're using pictures and they're using MTSS, but the schools themselves are not. And then so, how do you approach that? And it's, we're taught one way, but I'm an occupational therapist, so that's what I was working, and I was just told to pull out, and I even offered coaching, co-coaching, a class and all these options, but no, you're interfering with academics, you can't do that. So that's a problem out here in the Northwest anyways. And they're not respecting assistive technology because it's not a mandated part of the education system.
Right. Yeah. It is interesting.
And yet it is a mandated
yes,
part
it is,
of
right?
the
And yet
education system.
Well, in the IEP, yes, but
right. Yeah.
but it's not something that somebody's gonna I guess they feel that somebody's not going to bring the law down on them as much on assistive technology as they are not having a therapist, for instance. I don't know.
Well, and I think sometimes those finite points of is assistive technology getting implemented fully only really comes out when you have an individual student situation and a parent who says, no, wait, this is what I'm supposed to have, and forces the issue. And maybe it doesn't go all the way to a due process, mediation thing, but I think sometimes that's what unfortunately forces the issue. I know. I've talked to parent. Well, and I've talked to a lot of parents in the comprehensive literacy for all group that they never knew their kid had the right to have access to an alternate pencil. And that to me is in the category of assistive technology most of the time. And so we've had to walk through, like, how do you approach your school without really, really making them mad? Like, so there's coaching in that to me to say to the, cause you want to, okay, if you're talking about a kid who's in kindergarten, it is very real thing that you have 6 years of relationship with that school, right? So if you go in guns blazing as a parent of a kindergartner, then the relationship you will have with that school is colored by that for K1, 2, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6. And unlike middle school, it's like 6, 7, 8, and you're gone.
Unless you're in a small district like my kids are, and they're
K-12.
They're K-12. Because I had a teacher that was they were like, well, it's wrote on the board. I said, well, obviously it's not working. They're like, he can't remember what be that. And I don't ever want to be that parent. And I looked at the SPED teacher because her and I have a relationship, and I said, I don't want to be that parent, but I will be that parent if I need to be that parent. I said, you need to talk to your teachers. You need to talk to them and get them. I said, because if this continues, then we'll have an IEP meeting and I will be that parent and we'll write out in the IEP. Said, I don't want to be that parent, but I'm going to be if you can.
If you need to, right. And I think it's about how do we help our families? Because a lot of times I will get direct, even in my district job, I would get a direct call from a parent who has seen something about technology, looked on the website, found my name, equaled assistive technology. And they're like, can you tell the school too? I'm like, well, let's back that up a little bit. And even coaching them through, like what's happening already. And yes, of course, and this is our kind of process in the district. And yeah, of course, you can make an AT referral as a parent. I'm okay with that. Like, here's the screening process, but know that we have to work as a team, or whether it's K5 or 6-8 or whatever group of teachers, like that is the team that you are with. And if you go in guns blazing right in the very beginning, sometimes you have to, like, sometimes it ultimately gets to that, but how can we help people to be specifically advocating in a way that is, I know that you're supposed to do this and I want to be a partner in helping you do this. Here are some things we've tried at home. Like, to me, it's not necessarily about like just taking the nice way, but to me, it's about how do we continue to build relationship between the parent and the school from the time they enter till the time they exit. And I think that's something that having longevity in the same district, I've had kids that were pre-Kers that are now 24, 25, 26, and having the longevity to see what helped assist them the most was helping them to maintain and build the rapport with their school teams, because I'm not there all day, every day, but I can absolutely help to guide the team, even if I'm not there all day, every day. But it's a coaching dynamic that there, I don't know that there's a lot of research, maybe there is, and I just don't know it, about how do we do parent, like if we're standing in the middle between the parents and the school, how do we help that dynamic? Because oftentimes I feel like that's the space that we're put in.
Yeah, I do. I think that could easily be considered a byproduct of who we are in relation to this situation, as these individuals who are providing supports for all. But then that tech piece in the middle that we tend to live in that little gray area there. And it is coaching and it is all relationship building. I keep thinking back to with this parent conversation and the conversation we had right before about the professionals who are new to the field and the Gen Zs and those people. And it goes back to something that Sarah said before about maybe this is our opportunity to simplify the conversation and establish some norms with people. And I was thinking of that as we were all talking about the last time I was in a team with a Gen Z who was the same age as my daughter. So she was in that kind of that same zone. And I remembered that she came in hot to the meeting. She came in hot, not in a good way. And she was explaining how everybody was doing all these things wrong. And this person said to the group, this is going to go much better now that I'm here to help. And I was like, wow, that is hot. You can't come in hotter than that, by the way. I mean, that is, I think, the epitome of coming in hot. And so I took it upon myself to be her partner every time we did something. And I just kind of sidled up and I sat down and I was like, hey, I like your energy you're bringing. And I said, I want to be your partner when we do stuff. And maybe we can have a conversation about how your energy can best be used in this team. And I started to just have these conversations with her. And it was individual coaching within a larger coaching session about, hey, I think that's a great idea, but I'm noticing not everyone else is taking it the same way. Did you notice that? Or do you feel there's a distance between us as a group and the other groups? And so I took the hit with her for the things that she was bringing to the table that were, honestly, some of them were really good ideas, but the way they came across was so off-putting that no one wanted her there. And that became a real hurdle for our team. And so I did kind of sit with her most of the time we were in that live session. And then the next time we did a virtual thing, I sent her a message and I said, hey, can you hang out when we're done? Because I want to ask you about something. And then we had a conversation about how to approach being part of the team. But I think it was part of, and Tammy said it, people not knowing and not having experience in those situations and wanting to ultimately help. Because our realization came at the end of our individual private conversation that she had no sense she was coming across that way to anybody else. And she thought she was coming across as a good team player. And it was she was a little crushed that I was like, well, I don't know that anybody's taking it that way, but I think you have really good ideas. And so I want you as part of this team. And so that was a good moment for her as we had these conversations, but I just think it meant a different kind of conversation with her.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's whether it's the parent's perspective or in your case, Mike, the other participants' perspective. Sometimes it is group coaching combined with individual coaching of like, and wanting to highlight that person's strengths and not have it be like, oh my gosh, how dare you like voice that in this group and shake everything up. It's,
right.
People have really strong feelings sometimes, and it's about giving them the space to share it. And yet also when it like boomerangs off the group and is not heard, accepted, pondered, I think it does cause difficulty. And I did see who was it in the chat? Yeah, Jennifer talking about as we're losing staff in this time, like you may have worked really hard to build a relationship and rapport and be transparent as you're coaching people, and then the next week they're gone.
Right.
And the group dynamic again completely shifts when it's just that one person.
And thinking about this person, I want her as part of that team. She has the energy to be part of this team. So now it's just a question of aligning how she approaches the sharing and how she participates in the team, I think was the trick for her. And like you said, it's highlighting the good things. And that's how I started it with her when I said to her, I like the energy you're bringing. I mean, that was energy. I mean, it was something. It got a reaction. It was something, but it just needed a little refining.
Mike, I don't know if you saw in the chat the discussion about having this be an ongoing discussion. That was a lot of discussion all in one sentence. So my counter proposal was maybe we can take the month of January or the month of February and make it highlighted as a coaching topic special.
Yes. I think that's great. I think because I easily think we could take every section of this and make it a conversation. We may veer off and kind of circle around at times, but I think we could use that as a touch point for each week.
And I think if we broke it down into smaller chunks, like by chapters, it would help us maybe stay on topic. Like this was a great discussion overall, discussion about, but I sometimes need that accountability to dig in and
they're not ginormous chapters.
They are not.
They're digestible chapters. In the very beginning, I put a link to the book, but I will put it again in case anybody wasn't in here when they did it. It's of books that I have read, this is probably in my top 3 of changing the way that I coach people.
I agree. That's why it stays pretty close. And that's why it's got all these Post-it notes in it. Yeah, I agree. Vicky, I like your idea. I will make an effort to do that today.
That
Vicky
might
said,
make me actually get on Discord and
yes, the Discord. If people get on the Discord server, which that prompts me to find the link and then drop it in the chat.
Yeah, you'll have to do that because I'm at my office. I can't get to Discord at my office.
I love reminders. Here you go in the chat. Here is the Discord server to sign up.
I am glad someone else has that problem too. Right now,
well, I can do it on my phone if I'm on my own, internet, but
our district has blocked every Bitly, and they literally looked at me and said, open it on your phone and then email it to yourself.
Thank you for adding 10 minutes of work.
Exactly.
I'm like,
then chisel it into stone and then send it to yourself. Yeah.
Do you realize how many links a day I click on that are Bitly?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So Vicky, I will work on that. Vicky, what was I going to do? I'm looking
add
back.
Channels.
Okay, a channel and then subtopics.
Yeah, channels and subtopics.
That might take me all day, but that's all right. I'm willing to try.
No, it won't.
It will. Alyssa's laughing, but you know what? You know who I'm going to email when it doesn't work. I'm email Alyssa. I say, all right, it's not working. Why is it not working? Subtopics for each chapter. All right, you got it. And then what I'll do also is I will come up with a schedule of these because we're not going to meet next week. So let's talk for a minute about AT Chat. So next week, we're not going to meet that week before the holiday. Obviously,
wait, is this town hall or Twitter chat or both?
This would be town hall. I can't speak for AT Chat yet because Karen's not here. I can't just make giant.
I know. I just wanted to clarify in my brain as you were saying.
So we're not going to do town hall next week,
or the week,
or the
week after, which is the 26th, or
week after that.
I'll ask the group. Do people want to do it on the 2nd when you first come back from? Oh, or is that the day people get off? Wait a second. You might not even work that day.
People have that day off. I think
you're not even going to work that day. Forget
we're
it.
working.
Yeah.
We're not.
But I think for some people, that's the federal holiday.
January 9th is the next day. Is the next town hall.
I gotta go block this off on my calendar for the next month.
So I'll put that, and then I'll come up with a couple. Do you think we could do 2 areas in each hour?
Yes.
If we focus our energy?
If we tried to focus our energy, we could.
I think we could.
Okay. Hey, stop it, Cassie. Don't laugh at us. That's not right. You're part of us. Don't laugh at us.
Our energy, then maybe.
If we try to focus our energy, I think if we prep for 2, there may be some of them. I can think of some like 3, 4, 5, 6. They may end up being a 1 on their own, just because I like transparency, and there are a couple of them that may necessitate. I mean, we did all 7 of them in one Twitter chat, but
fast. Yeah.
So.
Kind of like this, to try to get all of 7 of them in as fast. But I'm thinking if we lump them together, maybe a couple might need their own. like, I'm just thinking because inquiry is like my thing now with questions. I
Mhm.
might say that should be its own week and we should just talk about that. But that's me. And I just, so thinking about that as we go forward, I think we're going to find ourselves all of a sudden with a very structured AT town hall schedule. Because I have something else on the block too, but I can't announce it yet because I don't have a date yet, but something else that's going to happen that Kelly just reminded me of, because Kelly's in on it too. Don't you all feel left out because me and Kelly are in on it and no one else is? That's what I'm doing. I'm all about putting different layers in here. Sorry, it's not very coachy of me. I get that, but
I will have to watch on the 16th because we have PD that day, and I am doing technology and the IEP during AT chat, so I will not be here.
Yes, you're building anticipation. Mike.
Building it
That's
in.
what-
We're building
that's what
anticipation.
Kelly
We're getting
said.
there. All right. So I'll come up with a little schedule and I'll propose it. And we'll see what we think. Because I think
And
that
there
could be
are
a good way
5
to do it.
Mondays in January, so that's good too.
That is true. Just looking at it. 1, 2. But then one of them we're
One
not
of
going
them
to
we're
meet.
not.
But I'm saying that still gives us 4 Mondays in
Yeah.
January.
Yep. All right. This is good. All right. Other thoughts before we leave? It's 1 o'clock or the top of the hour, wherever you live.
Great discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, this was
whoever
good.
Suggested this.
Cassie, thanks for putting that to the group and allowing us to jump on it and say, let's do this. So well done.
And happy
I'm
holidays,
all about it.
everyone.
Yes. Everyone have a great holiday. Oh, Carolyn, you switched to your
Happy
car.
Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, happy Merry Christmas, everything.
Yes. Happy everything to everybody.
Mike, did you get my email about cognitive accessibility?
Mary, I feel like I did, and I feel like it's buried now. So now I'm going to go back in and